Hello and welcome to the FinTech Finance Virtual Arena. I'm Doug Mackenzie, co-host, and today joining me is Flemming Laugesen from the bank Lunar. Flemming, how are you doing here today?
Really good, thank you. The sun is shining. Actually, this morning was the first day without a jacket going to work. So finally the summer is here and the COVID-19 is slowly going down. So yeah, a nice morning, thank you.
That's amazing to hear. Now, Flemming, I guess to kind of follow on from that for our audience who might not be aware, could you give a bit of background to where you guys are based, Lunar itself, and even your role there, please?
Yeah, sure. So so Lunar is actually on more locations. We do sort of point out Aarhus as the headquarter. It's where the founder sits as well. So Aarhus is the second biggest city in Denmark. We also have office in Copenhagen, which is the capital of Denmark. We are battling a little bit to be the biggest office and have the most nice office, but pretty nice spots, both of them. And then we just acquired a Swedish lender called Lendify, which is located in Stockholm as well.
Incredible. So it sounds really as if Lunar is heading for the moon with this. So guys, congratulations. Now let's kind of break into the discussion. Today we're going to be talking about how legacy is changing and becoming openness, and it's being fueled by cloud technology. So can you give us a bit of background to application programming interface? APIs have really been the kind of backbone, but why have they been this kind of why have they been so critical for enabling banks to take advantage of the fintech revolution?
Yeah, so first of all, the API as a term is actually very old. So API has been here for like pretty much ever since the birth of engineering, so to speak. But that was more like in a closed system where you use API to talk internal with programs. But of course, with the birth of internet, everything started to open up a little bit more. Then the API was more common outside engineering. So API is actually just defining a sort of a contract between systems to talk and interact with each other. So that could be whatever getting a data or ask for a function to be done. You call through system with APIs across the internet as well.
Incredible. Well, I mean, it almost seems absurd at this point to be talking about APIs, but I feel like in finance, we've gotten to the point where we talk about them so often that maybe a lot of board members, a lot of bankers don't actually remember what's at the heart of it. Now, with that in mind, with PSD2 and open banking being firmly established, especially in the Nordics, I'd really be interested in your perspective at Lunar, at how you see other organizations, other financial institutions kind of grapple with the concept of open banking and maybe even the regulation PSD2.
Yes, I think first of all, PSD2 is very welcomed. I think that's somehow democratized banking. Normally bank used to be a very closed thing, as a mainframe sitting in the corner and like hidden away. Yeah. But now with compliance coming in, legislation coming in and defining a way to open up that world, so democratize it for everyone, especially with the focus of the user customer. Because it's my data, it's my money. Why should you own everything about me? It's finally time to get the user in control. And I think that's the beauty with PSD2 and the open banking in general. I think, at least that's how I see it, incumbent banks is probably more looking at it as a compliance thing. They need to be compliant, they need to, have these APIs. But at least how I feel is that they haven't really bought into the benefit, because actually it does put their business model, their customers in a risk, because now someone else can actually come in and grab that data. So I think from incumbent worlds, at least what I sort of see here in the Nordic is more like they do it for compliance reasons, but the fintech goes in and see different business model, business opportunities, and then start grabbing these API and then build something on top that puts more the user in control. And I think this is also what the incumbents or the larger institute is starting to figure out. We need to be on top of this. We need to use it, because otherwise they might be out of business. Well, not out of business, but at least they will be under some pressure.
Yeah, I think that's such a good distinction to have. It really is the fact that the kind of the younger companies aren't looking at finance as a typical kind of traditional just mitigating risk and offering up funds and depositing money. They're actually looking at how you can convert financial services into actual new services, which I find really exciting. But as you've mentioned, the larger institutions are now actually starting to see open banking as being critical. You know, since the adoption of open banking, as you mentioned, smaller banks were gaining market share just because they could innovate quickly. So do you think that the larger banks that are typically saddled with legacy solutions can use open banking just as effectively if they use, for instance, cloud technology?
That's I would say that if I had the answer for this, I would probably write a book that will very quickly will be a bestseller. And this will be a lawyer answer. It depends, because I think really what's important is that start to look at how is this specific institute actually running. You know, how are their rules and expectation? What are the ways of working? How do they do goal management? How do they do organizational design? I think that is probably more important than cloud. Because if you don't look at how you work, how you're set up, how you engage with your employees, you know, then moving to cloud might not help you necessarily. It's just another infrastructure. So I really think you need to look at, you know, what are the environment that the engineers work in? Are they work in a fail-safe environment or safe-to-fail environment? You know, are they seeking pains, or they're trying to avoid pains? So all this kind of, you know, it's nothing about culture. I think will help unlock the more settled institutes to break out of their habits. Yeah. Because I think the most important is to break out these habits and ways of working. And then cloud is just, don't get me wrong, because it's really important. I will, you know, without cloud, I will be unhappy. But I think for the bigger institute, cloud, if cloud by itself is the goal, then I think they will miss the opportunity to actually reinvent and start thinking as a technology company.
Yeah, now exploring that train of thought, the IT crowd, the IT department, apologies, I've been watching too much TV. The IT department has played a critical role in facilitating that innovation. You know, it's not just cloud, every department has to be on the same wavelength. Yeah. You know, so how can banks, you know, these larger banks, if they can't just implement these new technologies to facilitate this innovation, how can large banks actually harmonize their IT department with other subdivisions to ensure that everyone's vision of digital transformation and innovation is on the same page? Everyone's working towards being the most innovative, large traditional bank that they can. Yeah. I think fundamentally there's many things, of course, and you need to, you need to be humble when you also answer that question, because it's so individual. Yeah. But I think overall there will be one thing that I think would work everywhere, and that's not even just for technology companies, it's more in general. And that is the classic way of thinking about organizational design is you have departments, right? You have a department. They're responsible for one thing. They group into functional, you know, what they are, the subject matter expert sort of within a group. Another department, etc. And I think what you need to do is you need to rethink that. You need to bring down these walls and start setting up teams that are more cross-functional. So instead of having an IT department executing on a cloud and a way of working transformation journey, whatever you want to call it, I would bring it down and group people from different departments into same team on the same mission. No department goals, no, you have a goal and mission for that team to work on all together. Whatever it's sales, you know, sales guys need to understand why engineers spending so much time on making it good up front, right? And engineers need to understand why is this so important to hit that date. And if you still have these, you know, solid departments, it's difficult, you know. So group them, get them into a room, let them sit together and be on the same mission. And that's also, I think, that one of the reasons why startups are so successful.
because they are small by nature. By design, they know what is happening. By design, they know what they should care about. But as you grow and you set up these departments, you only focus about what's important for my department. You understand? Do you get me? So I think this is, I think that will be probably the most important thing. And then the second will be the goal management framework that you're using. So traditionally, you have sales people getting bonus if they do sales. But some places that also work out pretty well. But again, that will again create some difference in what success looks like. So start looking at how do we ensure that we get the entire organization on one mission. I don't know if you're familiar with the OKR, Objective and Key Result framework, but that's just one management framework. It's actually highly adopted by Google and other big software companies. So I think, the two things, break down walls, get people in the same room, the same mission, look at how you do goal management.
I think that's absolutely brilliant to hear. And it touches on what I've been hearing increasingly in the finance industry, is the fact that no longer are the large traditional banks up against the fintechs. They're up against the tech companies. They're up against the Googles, the Amazons, and they need to change the way that they think and the way that they operate. It's more of a cultural thing than rather just a technological thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really interesting. So that actually leads me on to a question I had in mind for a bit later. So I'm just going to go straight to that. And so I'm thinking, like, how can these institutions use cloud-based solutions to maybe improve their customer experience and streamline their solutions in that regard, rather than just kind of an operational standpoint? How does this then go on and streamlining the back end go on to help the consumer?
And again, this is cloud is a big word, right? Because what is cloud? Is cloud also how you design and architect your infrastructure, or is this just hardware running out of cloud? There's also something into that, but I think overall, if you look at what cloud gives you, and if you move your infrastructure to cloud, but also make the migration to actually benefit and be cloud, because it doesn't matter if you have a system running on a hardware server on the corner, just put that to cloud, it won't bring you anywhere. So you need to refactor how you do things. But let's imagine you've done that. Let's imagine you have it in cloud, everything is good. Where it really streamlines and benefit the customer, that will be in the flexibility of cloud. The most obvious one is load, right? So if you have, normally banks, they run with a certain level of traffic. When it comes to payday, traffic goes up and then it lets out again. That's some of the things that you can easily do in cloud. You can set up systems to do this automatic. So that will be one thing. But also, you will ensure your engineers is not thinking about hosting and maintaining infrastructure. They can put them on solving customer problems, being close to customers instead of being nerdy around how to set up a new operating system, because that's out of the box. And I think that's the biggest change, is you have your engineers focus on customer problems instead of running an IT system.
Incredible. Now, once we've got to that point, a lot of large institutions that maybe haven't brought on that cultural change and have just looked at improving their technology suite to keep up with these tech companies or these fintechs, end up just issuing hundreds of APIs, onboarding lots of different companies to kind of help them be that dynamic company that they want to be. But actually, no one in the organization knows where these APIs are connected to, who they're connected to, So how can large institutions streamline that? And also, can we start looking towards the Lunar example of how you guys have just avoided that from the off?
The reason here the answer here is pretty simple. I think it's tooling. Start think as engineers. So we have different tools for different jobs. So we have the tools for the job, so to speak. So if for example, we have a tool using for just scanning dependencies across internal services. So we have more than 250 microservices in our infrastructure. So the microservices look at a small programs that are isolated, bounded context. They can talk to other programs within the Lunar universe. 250. as you come in as a new engineer, it can be very hard to understand how is actually all this web of calls happening. Then we have the tools for that. It's very easy for engineer to onboard, go into this tool, look who is calling, what are the dependency. If I fix this, what do I need to think about? So use tooling. You know, I think this is one of the critical things. Use tooling and ensure it's automated. Because when you start thinking about small pieces that are moving so quickly, we're releasing 40 times a day, right? When you release every day so quickly, automation is critical. If you fail automatic, that change you roll back to get back to a stable state. So it's about tooling and automation. I think that will help you get that view, also sort of for free, because it's tooling. If it's something you manually need to go back and and update some documentation on Confluence side or wiki page, it's never going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it just exponentially increases the workflow and workload of people when it's completely manual. You're putting your kind of innovative engineers on very uninnovative ideas and tasks, and as a result, you're kind of wasting money and time. So that's absolutely
actually on that one. I think we in Lunar we have 3 important customers. We have the external, of course, 250,000 external across the Nordic. We have our co-workers. So we have engineering team working for co-workers only. Most important, we have our engineers. So we have tech team just catering for engineers to be the best. And this is about defining the right tools for them to be more efficient, to focus on customer problems and not infrastructure. Whatever that automating, scan for vulnerabilities and security, whatever it is, they're taking care of this so they can focus on the customers. And I think this is also a structure thing in an organization you need to think about, is that start caring for your engineers, because then they will cater for our customers.
That's absolutely brilliant, and it's refreshing to hear. I don't think we've done several hundred of these, and it's getting to the point where I still haven't heard anything like that before. That's really quite innovative to be able to have backups to your backups for engineers. Typically, when you see an advert for engineering talent and you see the long list of coding languages, when actually that's an entire department. That's not just one. And you guys seem to really understand that. So I'm
actually even in the hiring, we never look for specific language, specific tooling. We look for attitudes and profiles, and then we can learn them whatever they should learn. And if they're not up for that challenge, then they're not a great fit either. So honestly, it's very hard to find someone that are working with the tools that we are doing. But then we just train them.
Yeah, incredible. Now, one thing that a lot of large institutions, if we can go back to their example, and because I think it contrasts well with your example, is if we look more on the operation side of things, we see a lot of the large scale institutions actually doing a lot of M&A, a lot of mergers and acquisitions. And when you've got a siloed approach across multiple different countries, how can technologies like cloud open up the language, open up the ability to kind of create these mergers and acquisitions in maybe a couple of months rather than years?
Yeah. So if we look at how we have architectured our infrastructure, again, back to the 250 microservices, each of these microservices represents some functionality. Normally, each of these microservices are part of more microservices that, to make it simple, create a feature. So, and this is how our entire infrastructure is built up. So there's different services that has responsibility for just doing one thing, and they're completely isolated for the others around. So that also, for example, when we're growing, as we do very rapidly, also with new talent coming on board, like every day almost, what you do is that you can then put ownership for one of these services to new team. Or you could split out new services to more services. If one service gets too big because you want to have more people working on that specific functionality, then our entire infrastructure is built for that completely. So if you do an M&A, you will look at what do we have in our infrastructure, which services do we have already, and the business we just merged with or acquired, which components should they replace in our infrastructure? And then you swap it out and put it in instead. If it's hosted in another cloud, a dual cloud setup, then you just have remote calls between the clouds, but still just replacing that component. So I think this is the beauty for us being able to do this without costing a lot, actually.
I mean, that sounds absolutely perfect for the Lunar example. And then if you're kind of gonna exponentially increase the size of operations, if we're looking at the kind of high street banks in the UK, to be able to just plug in and play like that modular approach while doing that in an agile way, that we're not talking about saving millions, we're talking about saving hundreds of millions of either crowns or pounds, aren't we?
Yes. Yeah.
Now, with that in mind, speaking of the bottom line, of the dollar, of the money, when we look at these digital transformations, the board always come in, and obviously the bottom line is the most important part. Now, what would you say to the board members of large-scale institutions that still don't see the kind of success of digital transformation? What are the short-term, low-hanging fruit that they can kind of see, this can make us money?
I would probably challenge that quote if a board member comes to me with that to be the main objective for going into cloud. I will reverse it and say, can we afford not to go in the cloud? Can we afford not to do that transformation? How can we stay relevant for competition and our customers if we don't change how we operate? If we don't get closer to our customers, if we're not quicker and adjust and pivot in whatever we're doing, how can we stay relevant? So it has to be an investment to go into this. How can we keep our talent when tech companies on the corner is popping up, new technologies, new way of working? If we don't adapt, I think we'll be out of business. Then the bottom line and the top line will follow. So if you have it as a goal to have a better bottom line, they will probably challenge if that's really is the objective. I will grow customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, the growth, get the growth back, and then we can play with the bottom line at the end of the day. That will be at least my thinking. Yeah. Some boards might disagree, I know, but some might say, hey, this is what we up for, and then it's a better match for me, I think.
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head if I was to use the idiom. And Flemming, I think that's all we have time for. Thank you so much. It's been really insightful hearing the way that Lunar works. It's so innovative, and to hear how technology is really at the heart of what you guys do. It really does seem, we hear so many startups, so many fintechs have this kind of agile way of working, but that ultimately it's a lot of fluff. With Lunar, it sounds to me as if the technology and the kind of the heart of that is right in the center of what you guys do. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Cheers, Flemming. And thank you to all our viewers as well. You can catch the rest of the series and much more over at www.fintechf.com, and of course, YouTube and LinkedIn, where I'll see you in the comments. And thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.